Well, let's go ahead and get started. Maybe we can get everybody reassembled in a moment. It's my very great pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeff Sutton. He's well known to, I think, everybody here as the Director and President of the National Space Biomedical Research Institute. And his panel is shown on the program, and I think they're ready to go. So, Jeff?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, and as people are going to come back in, but I would like to basically congratulate the panel before us. I thought it was just outstanding, and the comments that were made, and specifically the comment about Dave Dinges, is actually a good place to continue on for this particular panel, which concerns the guiding principles for international cooperation in spaceflight operations, research, and education. A number of the guiding principles concerning this topic have already come up and have been talked about in the panels before this, and some very eloquent remarks have been made. What I'd like to do is to put out there a short list that's not meant to be comprehensive, but nevertheless hits some of the guiding principles. First of all, I think there's a guiding principle of a desire to want to cooperate. I think that's a given assumption here, but it's not necessarily an assumption that works across the board. And I know that there's some controversy, for example, that Leroy brought up with respect to participation of China, which is well accepted here by many, but not necessarily by all. I think we need to, the second principle has to do with opportunities to cooperate. Opportunities for sharing knowledge, for sharing resources, both in terms of operations and research. And that really ties into a third principle, which really is the need to cooperate. And that can also pertain to resources for operations and research. But I think that there are other areas where we really do need to have cooperation with standards and protocols for health. And this pertains not only to the astronauts, but it pertains to the vehicle. So the words of wisdom of take good care of ISS. But I think it also applies to the space environment itself, and particularly in the area of space debris. I think there needs to be a guiding principle of international cooperation. A fourth principle is the engagement of those with authority who are often critical in making the international cooperation and collaboration possible. And so this was brought up already in the context of politics, but I think it's also brought up, should be brought up at the level of agency heads, of institute directors, and so forth, who set the stage to enable certain types of collaboration and cooperation to take place. And a number of folks are in this room. And the fifth guiding principle I'd like to bring up is a focus on the next generation, on bringing up a generation of individuals who have training experiences among our life scientists and our engineers and physicians who are able to train in an international way, who have instilled in them a spirit of international cooperation. And we've had some very good experience between the NSBRI and IBMP in the last year with respect to creating an international postdoctoral exchange program between the U.S. and Russia. And of course, there are going to be barriers and obstacles. We're going to need to be innovative. And through this conference, we've heard of many successes, and inevitably these will continue. And one local success story that we've had here is the establishment of a Center for Space Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, and our impending move in 2 weeks, along with the headquarters of NSBRI, to Rice University in the Bioscience Research Collaborative. And yesterday we met with our colleagues from the UK who've also established a Center for Space Medicine, and we're already talking about international activities that we can do together. So I think that clearly international cooperation is here to stay. It's the way forward, and we're really fortunate to have an exceptional panel. There are a lot of members on the panel. We have had some changes in the lineup from your program. So Leroy Chow, unfortunately, had to catch a plane. And also Sam Ting, who's the PI on the amazing experiment that's just gone up into space the alpha magnetic spectrometer, is not able to join us. Brewster Shaw is able to join us and is not on the program, and so we're really pleased. So given the fact that we've got about 13 or 14 panel members, that's about 7 minutes per speaker. We're really, really pleased that Charlie Bolden can come and is here. And so we were willing to waive the 7-minute restriction, and you can take as much time for a NASA administrator, you can take as much time as you like. So why don't we kick off here with Maya Crowley. So May?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Maya Crowley, the Science Consul at the British Consulate here, and I've been here for 9 years, really, working on science collaborations, and space medicine is one of the projects that we have been nurturing now for almost that many years. And I think the idea of having space medicine centers at university is one that really brings together multidisciplinary research, expertise, facilities. So, universities like Baylor that work closely with others across the road, like Rice, where you have engineering, medicine, nanotechnology, are just fertile for this kind of research. And another sort of good thing about these centers is there's really no politics. You don't really have to get to the level of governments and international agreements. Scientists work naturally with each other. All we do is sometimes provide the means to help them, whether it's workshops or visits. And science is international, and I think it's one of the things that really brings nations together on areas that might be otherwise controversial or areas we don't agree with. So I believe very much in using science for diplomacy, and that's one of the roles that we have. These centers who have these medical schools especially are training the next generation of medics, and I think one of the things that struck me yesterday from our discussions, Jeff, is the idea that medics on either side of the Atlantic or across the world are trained in different ways. So if you are going to work on something as international as space medicine, it's very useful to experience medical system and training in different countries. And another thing is, these university centers are sort of natural places of outreach to the community, to inspire students, sort of other generations of physicists to get into medicine, or vice versa, and also outreach to children in science, and raising the profile of space medicine in countries or communities where otherwise is not acceptable and frankly unknown. I think one of my comments on postdoc exchanges, because we've tried to coordinate many such an exchanges. And the US and UK are the most frequent destinations for our respective postdocs. In fact, it was an American postdoc, Watson, who, along with Crick at Cambridge, discovered the structure of DNA. So postdocs are mobile. And I can say this as an ex-postdoc, we were considered cheap labor. Barriers are usually funding. So it's either funding for research and, most importantly, funding for travel. So we do a lot of workshops. We get people together. But then there's always a missing part of the puzzle is I need to go and stay for 6 months or 3 months or even 5 weeks to gain expertise or to transfer my technology to somebody else's lab, but I don't have that part of the puzzle. And ways of overcoming that is really trying to make the case to the funding bodies. So we've established a research council office in Washington that now works even closer with NASA and NSF and NIH, and looks at dedicated programs for these type of exchanges. It's by no means perfect, but definitely a start. But I think this is still a big problem. And then the last thing on MOUs and strategic relationships. I mean, I've known Jeff now for 9 years, and we've been working on sort of strands of getting agreements together. But sometimes you have to wait till the time is ripe. And also, these are relationships you nurture, and they need commitment, they need follow-up, they need universities need to stand behind these centers and make sure they continue to succeed, and then provide enough networking opportunities and workshops like these where you have free exchanges. And I think that's it from me. I didn't really have any formal remarks. I hope that was useful.
No, that's great. Okay, Kassim.
Thank you, Jeff. I am Qasim Al-Qasabi. I'm the CEO of King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center in Saudi Arabia. I am an ex-professor of surgery and currently in the administration. King Faisal Hospital and Research Center in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia is a tertiary care medical facility, and it is the site or the center of the medical research in the country and maybe in the region. I would start, Jeff, by thanking the Baker Institute and the Baylor College for inviting us to attend the meeting. And really, although Saudi Arabia participated in the 1986 when His Royal Highness Prince Sultan bin Salman participated as an astronaut in non-medical experiments. It was about oil mixing experiment and jet ionization experiment. We are really here today is to learn from the expert, and our institution, as I mentioned, is the main center for medical research in Saudi Arabia. We are really interested in all types of research which will result in benefiting to our patients and improve the standard and the quality of medical care offered to them, especially in drug development or telemedicine, telesurgery. And we're really here looking forward to seek future opportunities for cooperation in research and space medicine or even future training. Thank you.
Okay. Jim?
Thank you. I'm a professor here at Rice, and one thing that I've learned is that most lectures would be more appreciated if they never took place. So I'll try to keep this relatively short. I think it's a shame that we're losing a vehicle to bring humans to space for some time. We have an experiment that's going up on the Soyuz mission, and every time I tell people that it's slated to come back in 2 years on SpaceX, they laugh, and that's troubling to me. So I have a deep concern about that, and that's a mission where we've made memory, electronic memory, which is stable to radiation. We've used heavy ion, proton, and X-ray, and nothing happens to it here on Earth, so we want to leave it in space for a few years and see what happens. We also have an extended project, and this is, again, all the research that I do is international. In my research group here at Rice, I have 30 people. Not a single one of them happens to be American at this moment. I have about 12 Chinese and about 5 Russians. And so we have international cooperation in education. This is what universities do, and it works very, very well. I sit on a deemed export control committee for the Department of Commerce, trying to get rid of many of the barriers that inhibit research because of deemed export control. My argument is that if the United States is worried about China, the United States has taken more from China than they will ever take from us, because we've gotten 30 years of their best brains have come to this country. Every patent that I have has Chinese or Russians on it, and so we collaborate a lot. This is what we do in the university, and just hearing about what goes on in space, it sounds very much like what happens daily in my laboratory. We work together, we laugh together, we clean the lab together. This is what we do, and there are no boundaries based on where people are from. And so we have a good record of that. We're also working on a project together to develop a drug that is potent sequester of superoxide. And so what we've seen is that we can really lower the effects of hemorrhagic shock when there's been a traumatic brain injury. This is supported by the Department of Defense. But this is a spin-off of something that we've been working on for many years to try to find a drug that could be administered either pre-radiation event or 30 minutes post-radiation event, both for here on Earth, if there should be a big radiation exposure and 1 million people are about to be exposed because of a cloud coming over, and you can't clear out a city like a city of Houston. Even in 3 days' notice, you can't clear it out, let alone 30 minutes. And it has to be a drug that can be taken orally, because you can't get 1 million IVs going in 30 minutes. So we continue to push that project. It's one of the hardest projects that I've ever worked on, but we hope to have success on that. We have another project that is the outcome of NASA engineers being in my office every 2 weeks. And the reason they're in my office every 2 weeks is because we had this idea to make a zero CO2 emission building on the JSC facility. Take a building and have methane come in from the city. We convert the methane using steam methane reforming, which is a process that's used all over the world in large quantities. We generate hydrogen from that and trap the CO2. The hydrogen runs fuel cells, runs the building, runs a car outside, and none of the CO2 is emitted. The CO2 is compressed using solar, and then the CO2 would be carted off occasionally by a diesel truck that would come and cart off the CO2 and use it for enhanced oil recovery, pump it down hole, and it would never come up again, or it would be used to make carbonates. And we would plant trees to make up for the small amount of CO2 that the truck itself would burn. So a zero CO2 platform. So we slated 30 undergraduates signed up, and so they were in my lab, and we started talking about graphene, which is a single atom thick sheet of graphite, which we make quite a lot of. And they started talking about solar sails, which I had never heard about, and I think we can make solar sails that are 3 orders of magnitude lighter and thinner than have ever been made before, based on graphene composite materials that are just a couple sheets of graphene and then a thin metal layer. But again, this is the collaboration that can come when we can have interaction between the universities and NASA engineers, regular collaboration. These are the types of things that come. And I'll finish up with something that I told a Senate subcommittee just a few weeks ago in Washington, is that I understand there's going to be a lot of cutbacks, but what's happening right now in the United States is that people are on our shores, particularly from Asia, that are enticing us overseas, that are enticing American researchers overseas. If funding continues to dry up, we will suffer a brain drain in the United States that we have never seen before. Because it won't take 10 years. Within 3 years, I've already set up a lab in Singapore because of they're setting these things up for us, and also the small companies that we start would have a much favorable tax burden, much more favorable tax burden than we would get in the U.S. So we really need to push that basic research continues to have to be done and have to be funded, or else American researchers who are quite industrious will go elsewhere to do their research, and that would be devastating to the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Soyeon?
Hello, I'm Soyeon from Korea. I'm senior researcher of the Korea Aerospace Research Institute. Actually, 3 years ago, I've been in space station, and then I had 18 experiments. Even though Korea is very famous for some electronics or some other things, and then surprisingly, most popular experiments was about food and education for the kids, because education kit, actually, that is really simple and small, but Korean teachers are very good at to visualize small science theory or some kind of things, for example, Newton's law or something like that. And then even though every country has a textbook and then they have their own tools, but ours is kind of, actually for me it was just a simple, but for other people it looked maybe impressive. So right after making a movie with this education toolkit. And then Russian cosmonaut helped me, and then he asked me whether he can use it or not after my landing. So I asked him why, and then he want to do totally same thing, but with a different anecdote and different metaphor, and then referencing different textbook, because they have their own textbook in Russia. And after that, we had Richard Garriott, and he's a space tourist, and after 6 months, and then he was working with the Challenge Center, is for the education center of the space. And then he also used exactly the same one of mine, with using different metaphor, different anecdote, and a different referencing the textbook. So I think it's a really great collaboration between country, because principal theory is totally same, but they can teach their children with a different ways. So in the future also we could do that, and then especially after landing to the Earth, and then after meeting some teachers, I heard about that, even though almost same kind of series of the education video in NASA website, but Korean kids are more familiar with my face because it's not big, tall, white guy, and they feel more familiar, so they can focus on my lecture, and then my way of talking is more familiar with them. So for the education, and then for the inspiring students, and then we could collaborate each other, because we all have the same theme, but we can explain with a different way. And also, not only for the kids, but also for some different peoples, and then especially because I'm a woman, and even though I'm the first of Korea, and then so many women are impressed by that. And then one female NASA astronaut told me our long hair is a big armory, because without anything in the space, we just untied our hair and blow up like a lion, and then it's very impressive. So it's also very simple but very impressive things, and we can collaborate each other, and we can inspire each other. So I could realize that education of space thing is not that big thing, and we could find it right around us and right beside us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy?
Jeremy Curtis from the UK Space Agency. My job is mainly to do with education, but I also have a role in microgravity. So there's various things I would like to say, but I'm coming to you to speak from the point of view of a small country that doesn't have a very large influence in human spaceflight. From the perspective of what is it that we have to do to encourage countries like ours to join the fold. I'm a strong believer that this is something we should do, and I'm hoping that you think that it's a good idea to encourage us in. So if we take that as read, then I'll move on from that. In order to make these collaborations work, I think there are various things we need to acknowledge, and the main one is probably self-evident, that all the partners in a collaboration need to meet their own needs. So the first step is to find out what those needs are. And Krista Fugelsang explained very clearly this morning that in Europe, the political problem is probably the biggest one we have to solve. And in the UK, I would say that's even more true than in the rest of Europe. So for us, I think we have to look at our needs and to play to the strengths we have in Europe. And the particular needs I think our governments are very concerned about are to do with science research and innovation, and in education. So we have universal problems across the world, and it's widely acknowledged in the UK that these are particular things we need in order to get out of the economic mess we're in. So if we take innovation and science research first, I think we've actually globally done a pretty bad job of explaining why the science and innovation that's come out of the space station has been so good. Obviously, in every area we can always do better, but I feel this is an area where it should be easy to sell. The media is interested in this stuff, and still we're not getting the message out. People still think it's a waste of money, and even people in the UK who have not contributed any money to it think it's a waste of their money. So that's completely baffling. So clearly we've got a big job to do here to try and persuade people that this is something that's worth doing, both from the point of view of what they as taxpayers get out of it. So it could be economic activity, or it could be more philosophical things, exploration, science, knowledge, and so on. So in order to make it work better, I think the main thing is to pick on the areas of expertise that each country has to offer, whether it's related to space or human spaceflight in particular or not, and draw them in through those areas of expertise. Now, in this room, there are various people from the UK who've come here because they've got expertise in specific areas, whether it be nanotechnology, whether it be sensors for intracranial pressure, or whatever. But in particular, the reason that we were talking with Jeff yesterday was to discuss our new UCL Centre for Space Medicine. And the reason that's important is because it gives access to a huge body of expertise in the UK, which is growing rapidly. There's big plans currently underway to expand activities in biomedicine in London. So there's a very large grouping of expertise that basically, through this new centre and links to the US and to other parts of the human spaceflight programme, we hope that those techniques, that knowledge and so on, will be of use to the human space programme, and in return we get involvement in it, and gradually we break down the boundaries, which at the moment we find are very difficult to get through, particularly in persuading our government, and to do that we need to persuade our taxpayers that their tax money is being well spent. So that's the innovation and research side. To move on to education, which is the other area that I think we all share a need, I think it goes without saying that we recognise the inspirational value of space, and in particular, if there are humans involved, that doubles the value and the interest. And we all recognise the need for improved education, so it's sort of a no-brainer. So this morning, for example, we had the final telecon on the Mission X programme, the pilot for this year. I see various people recognise it from nodding heads. This has been, for us, the most fantastic opportunity. It's NASA-led, but there were 9 countries involved, including the UK. It's aimed at sort of 10, 11-year-olds, so it's quite young, and the idea is to encourage them to use the model of astronaut health and fitness to teach them the importance of good diet, exercise, and the science that underlies it all. So it actually covers quite a large range of things. And at that age group, we've found in the UK that teachers have really bought into it because they can cover so much of the curriculum through one programme. So it's a very efficient way of getting a lot done. And then the bonus is they even learn about international activities. They develop more of a global outlook, which I understand is also important in our primary schools, which I hadn't realised until we got involved in it. So it's been a very successful activity. That's one example. Soyeon mentioned Richard Garriott. He helped us also in the UK on an education programme, and in fact she presented the prizes at the end of that particular one, which was great, when she came to Glasgow for the ISC. On Monday I'm talking to Anita Gale from Boeing, who I'm sure some of you know about the space settlement design competition that she runs. So these are all international activities which help to get our students in the UK not just improving their education, but gradually learning about the importance of space and the value of human space flight, so that we end up with a cohort of people who are already engaged in the process and who will lobby their MPs in due course. Now, as somebody from government, I probably shouldn't even be saying this, so I hope I'm not out of line here. But it's self-evident that if you've got people who understand the issues, they're more likely to treat them seriously, whereas at the moment I think we've got a complete lack of understanding among most of our populace about what we're doing and why it matters. So for me, it's important that we can explain to them the benefits to humanity. It's important also to get across a vision for where we're going in the future. So Kathy Larini is going to explain to you tomorrow morning what we're doing on the International Space Exploration Coordination Group. She'll talk about the exploration roadmap. So this is part of the vision of where we should be going. So we can't do everything at once, but I think these education programs can cover an enormous amount very effectively. It's a long-term plan, but it will help us in the long term. So I think the message is be innovative. So it's on 2 fronts. One of them is enable innovation so that we can get more benefits for our taxpayers, and the other one is to use innovative ways to engage some of these countries who aren't yet involved sufficiently, and ways of engaging the citizens of those countries. It's no good just engaging our government, it's also our people that have to be on side on this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeremy. Carl?
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to focus on just one narrow area. I spent a lot of my life dealing with international cooperative programs and very much enjoyed them, and in particular the space station program. The space station does have a health problem that has nothing to do with life science. And that's caused by the potential of space debris. At this point in time, there are something like 350 satellites which are sharing low Earth orbit with the space station. They're joined by about 16,000 pieces of debris which are tracked and bigger than a baseball. There's something like about 240,000 pieces of debris in low Earth orbit which are bigger than a marble, but smaller than a baseball. And there are millions smaller than that. Debris is things that's human created. In other words, when Sputnik went up in 1957, there wasn't any. In the last 2 decades, the density of debris in low Earth orbit has tripled. Now, 2 decades ago is when we were grappling with the environmental requirements to which we should be designing the space station. And the best data that was available had just been updated by LDEF, a long duration exposure facility that had been in space for about 6 years. And it told the then designers, it's worse than we thought. Well, since that time, it's become a lot worse still. Of the satellites which are in low Earth orbit, the 350 that I just mentioned, about 90% of them are uncontrolled. Uncontrolled in the sense that you can't ask them to maneuver out of the way of anything else. So this really means that there are probably of the order of about 40 items in low Earth orbit which can take avoiding action to the other stuff that is in there. So this is clearly an area that we need to pay a lot of attention to. It's an area which is going to get worse rather than better unless some steps are taken to remedial actions are taken. And I worry in particular about the opportunities which many, many more countries are able to have to get into space, being able to launch small items into space under conditions which aren't necessarily very controlled, under conditions where there isn't much expertise, but where we can't take away the right of all nations and citizens of the world to use the space environment. So if we want to keep an open environment which is safe and non-destructive, we have to start talking about how we work together in order to deal with the debris problem. There are several techniques, and the USA is by far in the lead in terms of developing our situational awareness and in some of the consideration of space traffic management, although that hasn't gone far yet. And there are some techniques for debris mitigation through design which have been in use, particularly in geosynchronous orbit, which make sure that things get parked out of the active orbits and that there are no fuel tanks that will fragment because of fuel explosions later in their life. But we're probably at the point now where doing it in accordance with just voluntary guidelines enacted by individual nations will not remain sufficient. And for this reason, there is a lot of activity in the United Nations under the Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, to try and move forward a little bit with how can we manage this issue. And so my reason for bringing it up in today's meeting was to identify, first, there is an issue. Secondly, there is a need for international cooperation and maybe control in the future to be able to mitigate the problem. And finally, this is obviously very important to the future safety of human spaceflight until such time as we're in a position to leave Earth orbit again. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up this important topic. Irina, пожалуйста.
Добрый день.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maximova, and I represent the Russian Academy of Sciences. And to be more accurate, this is the headquarters of the Academy of Sciences, Russian Academy of Sciences. The Russian Academy of Sciences is represented by a large group of scientists which over many years have been dealing with space medicine and biology issues. There is wisdom. If there is time to throw rocks around, there is also time to gather them. The scientists who work in the area of space medicine and biology have never allowed themselves the luxury of tossing the rocks around. We have been scrupulously collecting all the fine grains of precious knowledge that has been developed over the decades. But today, apparently, there is a moment that our glorious past is over, and we have to develop our common future. Our experience had shown that not a single country right now is capable of creating a huge leap. And we need cooperation as far as the space exploration is concerned. And in order to do that, naturally, it's required that, as Jeff mentioned in the beginning, that the resulting direction was directed in the needed, the resulting path had a required direction. And what is also required is creation of the appropriate documents. It also seems to us, signing of the appropriate documents, it seems to us that the signing of the appropriate documents between the Russian Academy of Sciences, Roscosmos, and NASA is a necessary thing. As you know, the Russian Academy of Sciences played a very important role. And the launch of the first satellite, Earth satellite, the first manned flight into space, were accomplished with the direct participation of a member of Academy of Sciences, Keldysh, who was the director of the Russian Academy of Sciences at the time, and Korolev. And right now it appears to us that in order to plan future development and perhaps a greater scale, on a greater scale, it would be necessary to conduct a whole cycle of fundamental research studies with international participation. This would assure a rather speedy and quality, good quality leap or breakthrough. We need a breakthrough. In addition, development of such a concept would attract public. The scientific research of space would be more attractive to public. Let's speak frankly. If several decades ago the news from orbit took first place on TV screens and where the hottest breaking news used to be on the first pages of newspapers, right now this has been lost to a great degree. if young people used to know by heart the biographies of the first 10 cosmonauts and astronauts, right now it doesn't happen anymore. And we need a significant breakthrough, a significant leap forward in order for the cosmonautics, astronautics, and its representatives to become a romantic aura again, to acquire a romantic aura again instead of being what they are right now. Of course, we need to work with youth, and we not only work with schools for young graduate students or postdocs, we also travel to schools. We tell about space achievements in space medicine, space life sciences. But from my point of view, it's more important and it's probably more essential that we, all of us, and our research are supported by every taxpayer. And how should that be done? Apparently, there is only one way to do that, so that each taxpayer understands that space development gives him personally, somebody who is a denizen of a metropolis or a small village, a visible, tangible benefit, use. What pertains to this development of new materials, new life support systems, ecosystems, but probably the most interesting thing would be attracting getting practical results, using the results of space life sciences in practical medicine and practical health services. We have such an experience in our country. It has turned out to be extremely useful. The IBMP employs, IBMP is the leading institution in this area. Our institute is a part of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and we're conducting a lot of work in that area, and we have observed with great interest departments. A great interest on behalf of departments of various clinics, both of adults and of children, and neurological departments. And I would like to speak about another thing that a little over a year ago we had a Psychology Society Congress in Russia. It involved several thousand people, and there were over 2,000 registered. Among many symposia that were proposed for public's attention, 3 of them were devoted to radiation issue, and those were some of the most interesting symposia with multiple participants. And we understood from the radiation problem is a matter of interest of many scientists, not of those scientists that deal with space life sciences, but also including physicians that deal with radiation therapy. And this is another practical application, example of practical application of using the knowledge that was obtained from space. Therefore, we would like it very much to wish all the participants of this summit to have faith in in continuation of space research on a sufficient level, and the only correct path that we may be able to choose in order to develop space medicine and biology, space life sciences, is cooperation. Thank you.
Okay, Brewster. Yep.
Is this working? My name's Brewster Shaw. I'm a retired farmer. I don't know hardly anything about the policy of international cooperation, so you might say, well, why are you here? And I'll tell you, because in 1977 I came to Houston for an interview, and the man that chaired the interview panel, actually no, the man that was the interview panel is sitting right here, and he gave me the greatest opportunity of a lifetime. So when he asked me to show up, I try very hard to do so, even though I'll embarrass myself. So from not of a policy standpoint, but an operational standpoint, why is international cooperation important? Go back to 1970. 1970, I spent some time in my United States Air Force F-100 fighter jet going very fast, very low, pulling very hard, releasing the weapon, continuing and trying to get out of Dodge before the mushroom cloud came. And the target that was over here, guess what color it was painted in 1970? Right, Charlie, it was painted red, right? So fast forward 30 years, I find myself with the opportunity to stroll through Red Square, to stand in a former Russian ICBM factory, and to work with guys like Sergei Sheyevich and all of that crowd. And to me, that was a lot better thing to be doing than practicing going fast in my F-100. So there's some value, I think, in international cooperation. Now, I've had the opportunity through the space station program to work with the Russians, the Italians directly, the Japanese on centrifuge, even the Brits on a glove box, many of the countries that are involved directly and indirectly in the International Space Station. And when you get below the policy level and you work with the people who are really actually trying to cause something to happen, you find out that we all have the same motivation, no matter where we come from around the world. We all want to contribute in some way to our species through the advancement of our knowledge of how we got here and what the future could hold, through exploration of our world. And I've even been in China last October, and although Mr. Wolf won't let us work with the Chinese, when you talk to them, they have the same kind of goals in mind. And so to me, working with the technologically advanced countries around the world for the advancement of goals that are peaceful and are related to the survival of our species are really good things to be doing. And so that's why I believe international cooperation is something that's worth putting some effort into. Thank you.
Because I got to read. I'm Charlie Bolden, and I'm the NASA administrator, and it's a pleasure for me to be here for I think it's my fourth year, I think. And I'm going to try to hit a couple of highlights and then get off the stage here. I have to admit, when Mike Raftery started his comments in the session previously, I won't say I was stunned, but I was surprised when he asked the question, should ISS be a part of the exploration program? And the reason I was surprised is because as the NASA administrator, what I have been telling people for almost 2 years now is that ISS is the anchor of our exploration program. Without it, we don't have an exploration program. So, it was an obvious answer to me, but I can understand how people will sometimes wonder, how do we intend to use it? And that's what Bill Gerstenmaier and the whole group that are responsible, international group that's responsible for trying to make space station policy and reach agreements on how we work together. Things like Anessa was talking about. How do we get crews to just do things because it's the right thing to do? And I guess I was spoiled because the first time I worked for her and Helen Lane and some others on STS-60, it was the first joint Russian-American shuttle mission, and it was a mission. I was just like Brewster, and I think any of us in here who grew up in the military in the 60s and 70s, we had the same experience. When George will remember this. I was in Washington D.C. and he said, "I want you to go back to Houston because you're going to fly another space shuttle mission." And I said, "That sounds great." What I had in mind was the Hubble Space Telescope, the first revisit to Hubble, because I was on the crew that had deployed Hubble, and I left it up there kind of crippled, and I really thought it would be great for me to go back and finish out this story. And so I said, okay, what is it? And he said, well, we've got two guys. One of them is sitting in the room. I thought I saw Volodya come in a little while ago. Vladimir Titov is here. There he is. But he said, we have a guy by the name of Vladimir Titov and another one by the name of Sergei Krikalev, who are going to be in D.C. tonight, and we want you to command the first joint Russian-American shuttle mission. I said, forget it. I said, absolutely not. And you know, people say astronauts don't ever turn down a flight. I said, you got the wrong guy. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you know, I trained all my life, just like Brewster. Those are the bad guys. We're the good guys. I don't want to do that. And back then, we didn't use the term chill out, but what George told me was essentially chill out. Have dinner. And when you finish dinner tonight, then come back and tell me that you don't want to go to Houston. And I had dinner with Vladimir and Sergei, and we had an incredible evening, just as I did the first time I met Yang Li Wei when I went my first trip to Beijing. And I found out we all had kids. We all had dreams. We all wanted to make the world better. And so then I said, okay, I can go do this. We need to explore. It's in our DNA. Somebody else said that earlier. And we do need to be we cannot be bashful about saying that. You know, a lot of people don't say it because they say that's not going to float. People need a better explanation. We need some spin-offs. We need some other stuff. But for every spin-off we can give people, then they'll have a counter. So it is important that we say we have to explore because it's in our DNA. My job as the NASA administrator, you know, I have a strategy and it's mine, but basically it's to make this world a better place, to make Earth a much better environment for us to live, to make it as inhabitable as we can, to try to fend off some of the things that we human beings have done that are starting to make it deteriorate. And we do that using some of the observations that we get from space, some of the experimentation that we do, places like the International Space Station, like we did in Mir, and as we do in laboratories around the world. That's our job, is to try to, you know, make the world better as best we can. The grim part of it is, just in case we are unsuccessful in making the world habitable for the billions of people that are increasing by ever increasing numbers every year, we have to be prepared. That's an ark, by the way. For those of you who are fans of biblical stuff, that's an ark, and it's the first example that you can get a lot of people from a lot of different cultures and a lot of different countries and a lot of different ideas, whether they like each other or not, who believe that it's important for the species to survive. And so if we get to the point that we cannot keep this world inhabitable, we have to have a place where mankind, where humankind can survive, to carry on the species until we get it straight again. All of us like science fiction movies, and you know, a lot of science fiction movies, somebody goes and gets on something, and it's usually called an ark, and they survive until things settle down, and then they can come back and we start all over again. Hopefully we won't have to do that, but we do have to be prepared to live off this planet. And we have to be prepared to live off this planet for prolonged periods of time. And it may end up that we have to live off this planet for a really long period of time, like a generation or more. And the time to prepare is not, you know, when the crisis comes. So there are very practical reasons why we need to explore and why we need to learn how to survive off the planet. But that's not the you shouldn't say, okay, let's go explore just for that. We talk about guiding principles for international cooperation. I'm a military guy too, so I'll just give you basic stuff. It's got to be affordable. You know, we can no longer have pipe dreams about what we're going to do on station, what kind of experiments we're going to fly. There is not a single nation represented here that has a lot of money that they can just throw at things. So we have got to get systems that are affordable. We have to be disciplined. And it means, especially for this community, those of us who call ourselves scientists and researchers, we have to resist the temptation to do the world's absolute best, most all-encompassing research ever known to man. We have to decide, okay, what is it that we want to demonstrate, or what is it that we want to prove, or what hypothesis do we want to test? And we need to design the experiment such that it does that and accept answering one question at a time, instead of trying to answer, all the world's questions in one fell swoop. So we have to be disciplined. We have to be relevant. And when I say we have to be relevant, one of my favorite projects, cooperative efforts right now, is with the National Institutes of Health here in the United States. I forget how many millions of dollars it is, but they are giving millions of dollars in grants for people to design experiments to be flown specifically on the International Space Station. However, it cannot be designed to have any need for an astronaut or anybody who's going to space. It has to be designed to use the advantage of microgravity, where we can see human processes sped up incredibly, such that we can make things better for people on Earth, so that we can solve illnesses and disease and the like for people on Earth. So that's the criteria for that. So it's got to be relevant. And I think with that, I will take a break and then come back and try to answer some questions. But is the station, should it be used for exploration? It's vital. It's essential. Without it, we don't have an exploration program. But it's got to be affordable. We have to be disciplined, and we have to be relevant. So there you go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your insightful, inspiring words, and also for making time in your busy schedule to not only attend, but to contribute so much to the summit. So it's our pleasure now for Chun-Si. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to come here to attend this conference. I would like to thank the organizers, Baker Institute, Rice University, to inviting me here. I have to say that I'm not a scientist. I'm not. I have no background, medical background or background. Do not have that kind of experience in work on space industry or in this kind. I'm actually a political scientist. I work on international studies, but I'm very interested in space area from the public policy perspective. So here, I would like to give my own observations from this perspective. I have to add that I'm from Shanghai Institute for International Studies, so I'm in no position to, but I'm not in any position to represent my government or even my institute. That's my personal observations. Firstly, I think I'm very impressed by the previous two sessions about the space activities in past decades. But I think the world is changing very fast, and especially in current world, we have to look at the space activity from a more global perspective. I mean, previously, in the previous many presentations, I feel specialists are very interested in their projects. They work very hard on their programs. But in the past decades, we focus a little bit on the national programs. And now we have to look at the space as a common grounds for the whole humankind, and we have to ask the questions: how can we build up and maintain a kind of order in that domain, and how to let every players in that area to obey, to have some rules or regulations to to obey, to follow, and that is very important. And I think, to my understanding, China actually is a newcomer in space activities, and China wants very much to join the international cooperation in space. But China also wants to know very much what is the rule, what is the order in this area, and how can China, carry out its international program more effectively and in this kind of international standard. So I think it's very important now for the community to think more about what is the order, what is the regulation, and what is the rule in this area. Of course, we have some kind of international law, international institutions in space, but many of them was built up in previously, and we have to update this kind of regulations and to connect this kind of international regulations with every country's law system. This is, I think, one of my opinions I want to say here. Secondly, I think very important is that we have to notice that space activities or space facilities now in today is more related to people's life. Maybe decades ago, it is more used by country. By military, but now actually every people and the industry depends very, very much on space facilities. And if the space facilities are disrupted or influenced by some activities, it will influence the life of ordinary people even. And therefore, maybe we have to look at the space activities more from this kind of commercial, civil, and this kind of social perspective. And I think we maybe have to think about how to separate this kind of competition in political, in military side from this kind of activities in civilian and the commercial part. And thirdly, I would like to mention is that community building is very important. And this is not only just the community building within one country, but also, I think, across border. Actually, someone said that there's no boundary for science. It's really true. And as I'm a student on arms control, I worked in that area for many years. I know that actually China society learn a lot. I think get a lot of benefits from international cooperation, at least in arms control, non-proliferation issues. Some of you might know that. Two decades ago, there's no such kind of studies of arms control or non-proliferation in the civilian university in China. But starting from 1990s, we began to build up such kind of program in, for example, Shanghai in Fudan University, and then gradually this kind of norms of non-proliferation gradually established, and I think it's very useful, and it's very effectively influenced the public debate about some international affairs in China. For example, when you debate about this kind of China-Iran relations, there will be different group of people. For example, for those scholars on region studies, for country studies, usually they do not have this kind of expertise on this kind of arms issues, on these military issues, and they generally consider this issue from the country-to-country relations. But on the other side, the people from the arms control non-proliferation group, they usually will cautious the government or the public that non-proliferation is such a international standard. It's a kind of international norms, and that China should support that. If we combine all these kind of different voices into the policy discussion, it will be a more healthier policy to be produced in a country. So in this regard, I think international cooperation also very important for a country's policy debating. So I think that's the three opinions in my mind I would like to contribute. Thank you very much.
Jackie?
Thank you. I'm Chiaki Mukai from Japanese Space Agency. And using this opportunity, I would like to talk about the research issue and also the education. And first, research, I have a couple of things that I would like to mention. The first thing is international cooperation for the research area is necessary, as Ines mentioned, to increase the number of the subjects and also reduce the operation time of the crew and avoid the duplication. So we have to work together on the ground to make the internationally integrated proposal to apply to the International Space Station crew to be involved. The second thing is that human research program need crew understanding and also the crew involvement. So even the researchers, scientists develop a very sophisticated, good research program, unless crew volunteer to be the subject, it is vain. So it won't work at all. So to me, this ISMS, International Space Medicine Summit, is very good because I attend this kind of meeting, but most of the time, the life science or research related meeting ask astronaut or cosmonaut to come, only one or two, as a kind of symbol of the space flight. But here, we have a lot of astronauts and cosmonauts and management people and researchers and engineers, so that, and especially the astronauts who are the experienced and also the senior astronaut who can influence the young astronaut about the importance of the research to conduct it in the International Space Station for heading to the Mars, I think. Because the ISS is the test bed for the exploration. So the number 3 is the international database is necessary to share the data to maximize the result. And the number 4, the standardization is also very important. And this standardization, maybe medical ops to develop standardization is easier than the research standardization, because research requires the creativeness, and researchers and scientists sometimes don't like the standardization, because a proposal should be unique if it's related to the research. And then the number 5, that's the last one, but it's the direction of the research field, especially necessary to go to Mars. So the number 1, the field of the direction, which I believe is the radiation. And actually, the radiation, the physics-wise, it's well established and well known and very well developed. But when the environmental effect, environment of the radiation is converted to understand the biological effect, then it becomes very unclear. And because different countries uses a different format and formula to calculate the biological effect, and age matters and organ matters, so it also makes this clear number of the biological, the radiation on the biological effect very difficult. So sometimes the difference between the different format to the difference is 30%, 30%. So it means accuracy of the biological effect of the radiation is, to me, it's not clear. I'm not the radiation biologist. Maybe the radiation biologist may say, oh, Chiaki, no, you don't know much about it. But I think that is the one that I think. So I really need a radiation biologist to investigate this field. And especially because that the number is used for the astronaut for their lifetime, the work condition in space. So it's very, very important for the professional astronaut whether they can still fly or not. And finally, and especially low dose and long-term exposure to the radiation effect is not enough, have not enough data. So like, for example, now Japan, we have a Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster, and I just realized that we want to dedicate to that problem from the viewpoint of space medicine. But actually, I just felt like that we do not have enough data to say something to the radiation workers in terms of the low dose, long-term exposure effect. So again, I think this field really needs the international collaboration so that we can have the international standard for this. So that's the radiation field. And the second field that I think, I have four fields to list for the research, is the gravity-related research, including artificial gravity. Because I flew 2 times in space. My excitement of the space was not I'm in the space environment, because I expected to be excited quite a lot. So of course it's exceeded my expectation, but the delta expectation was this much. When I came back, I felt like, oh my God, this Earth has a huge amount of the effect of the gravitational effect. So I just wonder, everything to me was new, related to the artificial the gravity issue. So one of the uniqueness of the International Space Station is that the existing gravitational level is microgravity. So with the complement of the centrifuge, we can create any kind of gravitational field for researchers to investigate. And we do not know much about the threshold of our body to sense the gravitational field. My first flight, international microgravity, the second, SS-65, had a wonderful facility called Nitsemi. It's a slow rotating microscope and macroscope developed by DLR. And then it investigates the threshold of the gravity threshold of the biological specimen, and seems like we as living organisms have a threshold between 0.2 to 0.3 G. But if it's correct, then when we go to moon and live long enough to moon, we may need artificial gravity, but may not need artificial gravity on living on Mars. But of course, on the way to Mars, we have 6 months 0G condition followed by Martian gravity. So again, we have to investigate how human beings are capable for changing the environment of the gravity. So that's the second one. And the third one is psychology, and this psychology and human behavior. But this part, Dr. Gushin has already explained quite a lot professionally, so I will skip this. And then the last one is the technology and to support autonomy in the spacecraft for preparing for the Mars mission. So basically, like a self-evaluation system or self-diagnostic device or closed environmental system or recycling system, so that we can winning from the dependent on the Earth. because we need to, the Martian the crew to head to the Mars needs to be very much independent. So then all of them, this kind of research, good international collaboration is necessary. And then the second one is education and outreach. And education and outreach, everybody believe that it's very important. And then because we need consensus of the public to promote the space programs that we really want to promote. And then the educational program can teach science and technology, international collaboration, and also the awareness of our precious earth, so ecology, environmental issue, including climate change, etc. And also it can teach children, not only children, but us, the preciousness of life. And finally, but it's very important thing is it can motivate people to have a dream. So we really need to promote the educational and outreach program. And then this usually, when we talk about the educational outreach program, many people think, oh, that's for children. But I don't think it's not only for children, but also the adult, including the young scientists, young researchers, and postdoc, that kind of level, so that the next generation, they can be a main players to promote this space program. So I totally agree that the keyword is international, and also not only the children, but adult too. And recently somebody mentioned that Mission X, which was organized by JSC, it can be a very good role model for how we can organize the educational program internationally. Because if the educational program is internationally, the people join to the program feel like, oh, we are connected to the other countries, so that they can be more promoted. So international collaboration is very important. That's what I think. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, it's break time. I'm probably the lone outlier here, being just a kind of simple flight doc. And I'm not really sure how I could add to what's been said by this really marvelous group in talking about international cooperation. So I guess I'll just share some of my own personal experiences. Like Brewster and Charlie, I also came from a military background and was a military officer here at NASA before I switched over to civil service. And one of the sentinel moments for me was working a mission, STS-99, which is a radar topography mission to map the Earth. And I was sitting on console with my Japanese and German flight surgeon while we were supporting a U.S. crew, a Japanese crew, and a German crew, all astronauts working together. And I thought, wow, what on earth am I doing here? When 55 years before then, we were locked in mortal combat and would have ended the other country's existence if it was at all possible. And I thought, this really is a sentinel moment for me, because the value of the space program wasn't in the technological advances and the exploration. It was almost a moral imperative for our survival. And so for me, that's what the space program, and particularly human space exploration, brings to the equation. If we can work on things commonly together, despite inordinate costs and risks to mankind in loss of life, it's far better to do it in the pursuit of something as noble as that than it is to be locked in mortal combat with each other. And so as I see, the world in conflagration, and I see the turmoil and the people's lives lost and the dollars spent, and I can't help but think, is there a better way to do things? And I'm hoping that the emphasis that this meeting will bring to the table is to continue that message that we really need to work together for all of mankind. And really, I don't think I have anything else that I could say that would top that. Thanks.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all of the panelists. You know, I have the good fortune of working with John every day, so I can always tell by his stride up to the microphone that, you know, there's going to be something really goofy that's going to come out first, and then he's going to be followed by, you know, something incredibly profound. But actually, what you led off with was with any questions. So I think at this point we actually have a fair bit of time, about half an hour, to have a nice discussion with this very distinguished panel. So whoever would like to lead off, or Jackie, if you'd like to add something.
Actually,
first.
I have a question to Charlie. Well, because you mentioned we need explorer because it is in our DNA. I totally agree with you, and I think the people under the flag of the space exploration believe your statement. But how can I convince the other people to explore Mars? Because sometimes people who are not interested in the space program don't believe that it's encrypted DNA.
I think everybody believes it's in our DNA. I just think that somebody mentioned it earlier. There are so many distractions today, so many other things. You know, you pick up the newspaper, the first thing on Tuesday morning, what did you see? You saw the shuttle on the front page of almost every newspaper, at least in the United States. And why was it there? It's usually not there. It was there because it's it was the penultimate mission of the space shuttle. It was the next to the last space shuttle mission. So that really struck people. If you think that was incredible, wait until we fly STS-135. So, you know, we are a very short thinking people. One of the advantages for me traveling around the world and having an opportunity to share with all of you in your own home cultures and home environments is I have come to realize that here in the United States, since we are considered to be the leader in terms of exploration, and that's something else that is important for my American colleagues. We are the acknowledged leader in space exploration. I had an opportunity to talk to the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology yesterday morning, and I began my comments by saying, you know, because everybody wants to know where's the United States going after shuttle, and what are we going to do with human spaceflight, and people. I hope everybody in here understands that we're just beginning. You know, we went through a period of 1969 to 1972, 3 years, actually, you know, of going to the moon. 75, we flew Apollo-Soyuz. Between 75 and 78, we flew 3 Skylab missions. And I'm not, you know, although I consider all that to be exploration, you know, we only had 12 people, 6 missions that did what we consider exploration today. That was leave low Earth orbit and go elsewhere in our universe. And I think we owe it to kids, to the generations that follow us, you know, to go explore again, like we once did. The sad thing is that there was only one nation that participated then. Because I asked some school kids this morning, how many people stepped on another heavenly body? And the answers were all over the place. And they always are. So, you know, if you're surprised that American kids don't know that there were 12, don't be. And then I said, okay, how many countries participated? Don't be surprised. They don't know. They really don't. Now, if that happened to one of your other countries, I think the kids would know. But here in the United States, they don't realize that there have been 12 people to set foot on another body that, you know, God created in this universe in 6 missions, and we did them all. Which is to say, we do have a lot of education to do, Chaki, and we have to educate not the kids, but the decision makers. And we do have to get them to understand that we can be very short-sighted, and stop now, but you don't walk away from exploration and then pick it up when you think we can afford it, or when, okay, we don't have all these other things like the football players strike, you know, or the lockout, which sometimes is more important than space exploration in this country. So that is you asked the key question: how do we educate our decision makers in our respective countries that exploration is important. I've been in the UK a lot trying to help, and I think we're making progress, believe it or not. But we do have to be bold whenever we have an opportunity to talk to people who happen to be in government. We have to get them to understand what we know, and we have to explain to them what DNA is and what DNA means. It means, that's what makes us who we are, and that's what makes us do the things we do. So I don't have an easy answer. I live around these. I am one of them now, and it's hard. But we just have to keep hammering away at it, and all of you just have to keep hammering away at it everywhere you go, that what we do is critically important, and it's critically important for the species. I think everybody in here nobody's talked about their own country. Everybody's talked about the human species, and that's what's really important, and we've got to find a way to say it better than we say it right now.
Yes, Jeff.
Continuing the discussion of DNA and of exploration, I guess I have to say, yes, I do believe it's in our DNA. Anyone who has seen a little child grow up knows they're always exploring. But it's also important, I think, for us to realize there have been very many successful societies in the history of humanity that have been stable, have not particularly explored outside their own boundaries. And it's important that we recognize exploration in a historical context. There have been ages of exploration. There have been ages of great stasis in human history. And so when we're looking for justification for exploration, I think we really do have to go beyond just statements like it's in our DNA, because that is not enough to open up the pocketbooks of people who support exploration. Exploration historically that has been sustainable has produced generally economic benefits. It may be that we sail over the horizon and discover an island or another continent, but the reason to keep going back there and doing it has been because it's brought positive returns to our society. I think we have yet to come out with a sustained argument for the economic benefits of human space exploration in the way that is quite clear to anybody who looks at it, that, satellites, space technology in general have produced enormous results. There hasn't been too much discussion here of commercial space flight and, what might be ahead in the next decade. I do wonder whether the increased attention, which is almost certainly to come when much larger numbers of people start flying in space, might actually benefit government-funded space flight and exploration because of the increased interest and the fact that people will be thinking about it. Certainly we need to be looking out for that and able to take advantage of it when it happens. So, like Charlie and everybody else, I don't have the answers of how to convince the decision makers of why it's important to continue supporting space exploration, but it's clear to me that we have to go at a policy level beyond just saying it's in our DNA. Deeply, it's true, and I think we all believe it, but I don't think that's going to open up the pocketbooks.
I just wanted to add a comment to what you said about DNA and how we convince different people. I know this sounds really obvious, but I think we need to do a better job of crafting specific message to the audience we're talking to. So, talking to governments that are struggling with economy, emphasize economic benefits, science, technology, innovation, different message for adults, different message for kids. And I don't know if we do that enough. In fact, there's a big issue in communicating science altogether, but in this case, it is a hard sell, especially in these times where a lot of cuts are happening and you have to convince taxpayers that this is the best use of their money. So maybe it's sort of trying to bite off small pieces, like what we're trying to do in the UK. And it's hard to present a big program to government or public, but really start smaller and engage in countries that are not fully engaged and present it in a way that's sort of surmountable, not completely huge. So
I'd like to pick up on the leadership question that Mr. Bolden raised. It's a very important one. I know I can speak for the Canadian experience. When the US government made the commitment to go into the shuttle development and subsequently the space station program development, getting the political commitment and sharing that with politicians was probably more significant than any interagency arrangement could have been. In other words, it needed the top down to begin to allow the people who control funding to start saying, yeah, that's a program we can work with. So when you say leadership, I think it probably will need a nation such as the USA, which with such a strong program, to make a firm commitment, and that I'm sure would have tremendous political importance in other countries to participate.
No, go with your question, Jim, and I'll go after you.
I just wanted to follow up on the role of commercial space transportation and what the panelists feel the impact might be on international cooperation as we move more and more into using the commercial market to provide the transportation to space.
From my perspective, I think there's two obvious advantages in commercial space. The first one is that there'll be, with any luck, cheaper access once there's larger numbers and there are commercial operators in competition with each other. The price will come down and governments will therefore have cheaper access to space. And the second thing is, I think somebody alluded to the increased interest. People will be starting to think about where they can go and where other people will be going. So I think it'll increase interest. So I think there's two main benefits there. There may be others that other people could mention.
A point I was going to make before Jim asked the question, and the question, I'll make my point hopefully in response to your question. I always tell people there are two things we do when we talk about space. We provide access, and then we go explore. Nations explore, and commercial entities do access stuff. They provide taxis and the like. And one of the reasons that we are where we are in the United States today is that we tried to do both, and we found very quickly, like before we even got out of the chute here, and there are a lot of people who were around in the early 70s with the space program. I wasn't, but in reading my history, we found out almost instantaneously as soon as we decided to go with this providing routine access to space through something like a shuttle and exploration through an orbital maneuvering vehicle and a station, that really its original intent was to be a waypoint where we could assemble other spacecraft outside the gravity well of Earth so that we could go back to the moon and on to other planets. That was the original intent of the space transportation system back when old guys like Brewster came. No, he wasn't. He was like me. But that was where we were, and we found out very quickly you can't do all that. Even a nation like the United States can't. I think you're going to find before the end of this calendar year, we're going to do one more thing that's going to. Now, whether I'm not talking about a specific company, okay? So don't get me wrong here. But we will make two strides. We will have two companies, I think, before the end of this calendar year, who will have demonstrated that they can launch a spacecraft, can put a spacecraft in the vicinity of the International Space Station and have it behave the way it should, and just the way that the Japanese and the Europeans did with ATV and HTV. And then we're going to birth those two things to the International Space Station, and they're going to stay there for a few days, and then we will start to think about them like HTV and ATV. that is going to be an incredible milestone for us to get over. And then everything's in perception. When Brewster's company decided that they were going to enter the race, if you will, in terms of providing commercially available access for crews, you cannot believe how that changed the whole tenor in Washington, D.C., among the leadership. And it's a mindset. We don't comprehend yet on this commercial entities providing access. Our partners have always been industry. It's never been any different. We're just going to do it a little bit differently here. But I think those two things, having someone who has actually done it now, gotten to space, and then having an established company like the Boeing company say, we think it's worth the risk. Everything we do is risk. And they think it's worth the financial risk. From a United States standpoint, as Jim pointed out, where we will lose our technological leadership and our leadership in exploration is if we continue to let our brain power erode and we allow research and development to continue to go offshore. If we don't retake the leadership in research and development, and that means the government has to spend some money there. And that's what I tell people every time I go to the Hill or in private meetings. We have got to get back to the point where we, the largest nation in this room, is putting our money into research and development. Otherwise, people are going to go other places. So that's really critical, I think.
To me, all this boils down to something Mr. Torr said, that your students are, a large part of your students are foreign, coming here to learn. Where are the American students who want to be engineers and mathematicians and astronauts? Why is that? What happened to this country? We lost something.
Everybody wants to get rich. In a nutshell. I was at commencement at a major university 2 mornings ago. And I was sitting there with the president as we saw the science and technology graduates. When I graduated, there were no females. When you go to commencement today, the engineers and the scientists going across the stage, for the most part are female. When you watch American men go across the stage, they're all getting MBAs or, a bachelor's in business because we have allowed them to believe that, you learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide and do some intriguing things with money and you'll be rich. Again, we've got to help them understand that there is money, but more than that, there is satisfaction, personal satisfaction in getting into fields of science and technology. I'm just being plain old brutal about it, okay? If I'm wrong, somebody say I'm wrong.
There are exceptions.
Very few.
Well, as I had said when I was on the panel, the mission's got to drive that. So you give our students a very difficult mission like Mars, give them some money. Excited, smart, passionate people will do the job. So I need to say no more.
Speaking from the NSPRI perspective, we've had about a 30% increase in the number of applications for our summer student program that draws from undergraduate students. They need 2 years of college. And it used to be that if you applied, you basically got in. We have slots for about 18 or 20 folks, and we do this program jointly with NASA. We're now expanded to centers beyond JSC. We have hundreds of applications now. So there's a lot of interest. The problem that we have is that we don't have enough slots to put these kids in. And we've teamed up with industry, and we started a new program called the Space Biomedical Engineering Apprenticeship Program, which is just taking seed because we have a lot of engineering students. And it's mixed of U.S. citizens and foreign nationals. But we're in the unfortunate situation again where there's a lot of demand and very little supply. And Judy, who runs the program on the NASA side, agrees with this that we can't place them fast enough. So there's imbalances that go both ways, actually.
I was reflecting back on this morning and the first decade or two, and I think there was plenty of DNA involved, but there was one other element that propelled this, and it was competition. There was a sense of competition. And so if we come back to the afternoon, we're saying, let's all get together and we're all going to get in the same room. And we may be losing at least a perspective of competition. And this, when you look at the age of exploration and all of the voyages, there was a sense of competition there. One country was trying to find it and the other one wanted to make sure. So to what extent is competition a necessary ingredient to propel space exploration?
Anyone on the panel want to respond to that?
I would say a good example of that was the space station program itself. It was established as a statement by President Reagan of competition in a peaceful scientific endeavor to counterbalance what the Soviet Union was doing in its space program with its various satellite countries. And the space station program started faltering with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, because one of the underpinnings of having driven that forward wasn't there anymore, and it took a long time to rebuild a rationale. So I would say that would be a good example.
And I'm not trying to promote political competition like this, but it seems that that's an ingredient in
human nature or market economies and everything is the competition promotes efficiency, competition promotes innovation and all that. And it sometimes has a bad meaning, but it maybe is a necessary ingredient.
Could I just respond? Another role that I have is that I'm the UK representative to the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier. One of the thinking processes that's going on in the collaborative effort between the 14 nations that are involved in that is that in order to make systems work in space, we're going to have backups. It's no good if one country is responsible for all of the power supplies, let's say, if you're building habitations on the moon. Supposing they've got it wrong, it doesn't work, we need somebody else to do it. So effectively, on the whole, there'll be two different nations at least working on every important aspect of space exploration. So you get your competition between those two, because of course the one that's better will be the one that is the prime version on the whole, and the backup will be the backup. So there is competition in there, but there's also collaboration, and people come up with awful portmanteau words to combine collaboration and competition together. I'm not totally convinced by that, but that is one aspect of how we will make sure there is competition. I see Kathy nodding. I have got that right then. Thank you.
Jay Barbary of NBC, who's a reporter, wrote an article the other day that, and I think he titled it "The Space Race is Back On." And I commended Jay on his article because what he did was he pointed out that it's not nation versus nation today, that in commercial spaceflight, it's industry, it's company versus company. And what gives me encouragement, and you know, I'm always an optimistic guy. I think most of you know that. But I am encouraged because I see not only American companies that are becoming competitive in trying to corner the market on providing access, but they're forming international collaboratives. ATK and ESA or whoever made EADS. But I mean, you're seeing business competition, and that's where I think it should be, at least as the basis for this other stuff. And then we can go explore.
Well, Charlie, we had companies were competing all the time for contracts from the time we started. So we've had that competition. I would say to you all that there is no doubt in my mind with when we were trying to get to the moon, the thing that had us spurred every single flight, like I said this morning, was that we were trying to beat the Russians. And that's what we were trying to do. And as soon as we had accomplished that, the interest in our country after Apollo 11 landing went right down. And I don't know what we can do to get that same. I hope we don't have to do it that, okay, we're competing with a country that we want to blow up or something. I think that's totally wrong. I totally agree what someone said up there, that I think space exploration is probably the only thing other than a war that could keep our nation on the cutting edge of science and technology. And I think that's what we've got to try and keep and stimulate.
I think even more primal than competition, though, is a sense of urgency. I think that's underpinning it, and that shows up in competitions. It shows up in Charlie's Planet Doomsday scenario. I think maybe one of our goals ought to be to figure out how to inspire a sense of urgency that doesn't require a destructive sense of competition politically or nation against nation. We've heard a lot about the powerful synergies of multinational cooperation, and I wonder how we can create a sense of urgency that doesn't depend on destroying that.
Конкуренция, конечно, хорошая и острая приправа.
Competition is a good spice, but based on the limited resources that all of the countries are experiencing right now, it's important to have economic feasibility, economic results, economy, and what I have mentioned that are fundamental research, and my colleague said research and development. The wide front of research, according to coordinated program, has a very clear path, resulting path, derivative, and a clear benefit if we concentrate our efforts in the same direction, and probably it could compensate for the spicy dish of competition, and could lead to economic profitability, because for each of the countries this is not an unimportant
just before
factor.
taking the question from Larry, I just wanted to make a general observation that pretty much every question's come from this half of the room, and I know that the panel's on this half of the room, and this half is extremely well. So if we can just shake things up a little bit, that would be kind of mix things up a bit. That would be great.
Would you like me to walk over to that side of the room?
Well, that's a good start, but I'm not sure that's sufficient. So. Oh, okay. Okay, so.
If the gentleman from Pennsylvania, well, yeah, no, that's right. I too am an optimist, and I want to return to a point that Charlie and Jeff were discussing about students who are electing science and technology, and in particular our field of space medicine, bioastronautics. The NSBRI supports a program up at our place where you get 10 applicants for every one we can admit. And I suspect that at Texas A&M and the University of Colorado, it's close to the same. It's not the quantity, it's the quality. We don't need thousands of new leaders. We need tens and hundreds. And from then you find the Korolev and the von Braun and the Carl Sagan who lead and inspire. Admittedly, we're lucky enough to get a look at some of the brightest people in our country, but I have no fear at all about a flow of highly qualified young people to be our followers.
So I look in the mirror, I feel young, but I realize my days are numbered now. And, this sounds pretty defeatist. Ladies and gentlemen, the people we need to convince are not in this room. They're 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds. They're my grandchildren. And they don't see countries. I got to tell you, you think this is the United States versus Russia and that's going to motivate them? Forget that. They don't see color anymore, and they don't see countries. It's a different world coming. It's a multinational world. It's a world where the kids of different countries have a much healthier respect for each other. Now, whether the governments do, I don't know, but they do. And my sense is we'd be better off inspiring them around an international cooperation towards humans living in space, or something that's a rational goal, and give them the images and cartoons and clothing and everything else that lets them create games and other ideas around that and inspires them towards going. I really think... Didn't anybody hear that?
I really... No risk, right? No risk at all. And I'm serious. I really think you should go back to what the educators are focusing on, trying to get children to look at this, because it's going to. Sure, we got to get through the next 20 years to get the commercial space flight involved, and they're going to be competitive, of course, and they're going to look for the bottom line. But they'll also want to be bailed out if they go broke or whatever. So we need a plan B as well. But in the meantime, I think we really want to focus on inspiring kids. And I gave my grandchildren a picture, an astronaut picture signed, and the parents were like, we don't need that. Why did you bring that? But the grandkids said, that's cool, Baba. Let's put that on the wall. So I really think we don't have to be quite so cynical. It still is possible to reach children. We just got to compete effectively. Get on the cartoon shows. Get in the world they live in, okay? And let them, by the way, they're going to create the future, not us. They're going to tell you whether countries will or will not have wars or how we're going to get along. But I think they're going to be more tolerant. And hopefully we don't have to have another war to go into space and colonize anything.
Yeah, I want to go back to the competition. Regarding the international competition, probably it's a good thing to stimulate the whole thing up. But that's another question is that do we have international standard? For example, if we build a shuttle, and then how's the docking system? If that's international recognized or everybody follow. If so, who will make this kind of a policy, or who will make this kind of a rule?
Gerst, are you back there? You want to talk about it a little bit? Did you hear his question? Yeah. I'm asking Bill Gerstenmaier to answer the question for right now because, there is an organization that's in existence that's trying to do this.
What we've done for the docking standard is the international partners have gotten together and we've devised a standard called the International Docking Standard, and it sits out on the web. And it's available for all countries to go ahead and take a look at. It's not a design. It's very different. But it just gives you the basic standards, and if you can build your hardware to this, two vehicles can dock to each other. So we've put that out. It's voluntary. We're getting lots of interest from lots of countries. Everybody's starting to think about it. They're giving us comments back. So we've taken that first step to build that standard. We're also stepping up now to some electronics boxes and some other things that we're also going to put out as standards. And then if we can get companies built into those standards, then I've got a suite of hardware I can assemble into exploration vehicles that come from a variety of sources, and they're not coming from one country. But it's very different. It's not a design. It is the standard. So the trick for us is how to specify it at a high enough level that you can actually still get something to work, but not at so low a level that it drives you to a design.
Just one slight point. I wanted to take slight issue with one comment, which was the US was leading the space race, as we had the perception it was the US and Russia leading the space race. So could I just, on behalf of Russian colleagues, reassert Russia's very important contribution to the space race and the fact it's still very importantly there. Coming from the UK, we have great respect for both US and Russia and absolutely welcome collaboration on all fronts. I also wanted to draw attention to Kevin Fong at the top there, Dr. Kevin Fong, who's I know been trying to ask a very much more intelligent question than I will be able to ask. So it's one way of making sure that he gets the microphone, and I apologize for that.
So, Kevin, do you want the last question or comment?
No pressure. I just want thank you. I come from a country that used to do exploration,
about 100 years ago. And look, initially those programs are driven by competition, and Scott and Amundsen went out onto the ice, and Scott and his team died, and that's how it was at the start, and that drove the first 50 years of it. I don't think that the next 50 years of human spaceflight can be like the first 50 years. I don't think they can take place in the same way. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. And if you look back at other programs of exploration, they only reap genuine rewards for everybody else when they reach the point of commercial sustainability. And that's pretty much what happened in Antarctica. People didn't start going back in force across, collaborative effort of many nations until about the 1950s, when commercial airlines and commercial ship lines made that possible. And so I think that competition drives the initial phase. I think sustainability has to be what comes next, and I'm hoping at least that's what we're going to see.
Well, I want to thank the panel very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. And I think this was a very good discussion on many principles from the standpoint of international cooperation for ops and research and education. And if you join me in applauding the panel, and thank you very much.